Thank you for that warm and moving introduction, and for your extraordinary courage in the work that you do every day. And I will say, the thud thing, don't quit your day job yet to take in marketing. But it is, we're going to look at this. We'll get back to you right away about whether it might be catching. It might catch on. But seriously, each of you here tonight reminds us why I am so proud, this administration is so proud to be partners with you in the fight for equality. It is as simple and as straightforward as that. I also have to say that you have been a remarkable, remarkable ally. Mara and everyone here tonight, a remarkable ally to us as we work together to advance the rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. I want to congratulate our honorees tonight, Donna Cartwright for her long history of advocacy for transgender people, and for her extraordinary leadership with Pride at Work. And I have to say a special thank you and recognition to Brian Bond, my friend and colleague who has done so much for the community, most recently at the White House Office of Public Engagement, and now at that major political party which hasn't been named before. Brian, thank you, and congratulations. Donna, and I will say, it is a very special honor to be the first sitting cabinet secretary to address the National Center for Transgender Equality. But I also want to be very clear that I will not be the last. And you will have many more people celebrating the work that we're doing together. And I do want to spend a moment to talk about the progress that we've made, the historic progress that HUD has made in fighting for the rights of transgender people. But I have to say, before I get to that I am even prouder to do it on behalf of the first administration that has viewed the fight for equality on behalf of the transgender community not as an issue, but as a priority. In the Obama administration, the LGBT community has had a seat at the table since day one. Not only when it comes to LGBT-related efforts like the Act Against AIDS campaign, both in the planning and the rollout of it, but also at important initiatives that impact every single American, such as the White House Forum on Health Reform and the Fiscal Responsibility Summit. In fact, I know Mara was at the launch of the White House Council on Women and Girls less than 2 months into the administration. You can see that commitment to inclusion and participation in the record number of LGBT appointments President Obama has made, and that includes openly transgender appointees, many of whom are here tonight. You can see it in the Office of Personnel Management's announcement prohibiting discrimination on the basis of gender identity in federal employment. You can see it in the VA's directive to ensure respectful and non-discriminatory care for transgender veterans. One of our veterans deserve nothing but our thanks and our commitment to their well-being. You can see it in the State Department's efforts to ensure greater dignity and privacy for transgender passport applicants. And you can clearly see it in the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Law. I am proud to work for the president who signed the first ever federal civil rights legislation to include the words sexual orientation and gender identity, to work for the first president to sign a law with those words, the first president. A remarkable achievement. But I'm here this evening because this administration is not only committed to ensuring the transgender community has a seat at the table, but also a place to call home. Every person in this room knows that the rights most people take for granted are routinely violated against transgender people. It's estimated that 1 in 5 transgender Americans have been refused a home or apartment, that more than 1 in 10 have been evicted because of their gender identity or expression. Nowhere is the challenge clearer than in homelessness. 40% of homeless youth are LGBT, and half of them report experiencing homelessness as a result of their gender identity or expression. Even more troubling, the majority of them report harassment, difficulty, or even sexual assault when simply trying to get access to a homeless shelter. Allowing this to happen is wrong. And more importantly, it's not who we are as Americans. That's why I'm proud to stand before you tonight and say HUD has been a leader in the fight, your fight and my fight, for transgender equality. And I want to pay particular recognition and to say a particular thanks tonight to John Trasvina and Ken Carroll in HUD's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity for their remarkable work to win that fight. Over the last 30 months, we've worked to ensure that our housing programs are open not to some, not to most, but to all. Perhaps the most significant step we've taken is proposing new regulations that will ensure transgender individuals and couples can be eligible for our public housing and housing choice voucher programs that collectively serve 5.5 million families. Now, some outside this room might ask, why do we need this rule? Let me tell you about Mitch and Michelle DeShane. 2 years ago, Michelle wanted to add her partner Mitch, a transgender man, to her housing voucher. The local housing authority denied her request because the couple didn't meet its definition of family. Then, the housing authority referred the couple to a neighboring housing authority because, as they were apparently told, and I quote, "The neighboring housing authority accepts everyone, even Martians." That is simply wrong. No one should be subject to that kind of treatment or denied access to housing assistance because of their gender identity. This rule will also make clear that gender identity and sexual orientation should not and cannot be part of any lending decision when it comes to getting an FHA-insured mortgage. FHA, which is part of HUD, was responsible for 40% of all people who bought homes in this country last year. 40%. It makes clear that the term family includes LGBT individuals and couples as eligible beneficiaries of our public housing and voucher programs, and it prohibits owners and operators of HUD-funded housing or housing whose financing is insured by HUD from inquiring about the sexual orientation or gender identity of an applicant. Now, as we've come to expect from everyone here tonight. You tell us what you think, you tell us when we get it right, and you tell us when we think we can do even better. And we've heard your concerns from NCT that simply preventing people from inquiring about gender identity may not be enough to prevent the discrimination that we all want to make sure never happens again. And while we're still reviewing all of the comments that we got before final publication of our rule, let me simply say that we've heard your concerns on this and that they haven't fallen on deaf ears. At the same time we're working to better protect the rights of transgender people, we're also working to better understand the challenges that you face every day. For the first time at our annual National Fair Housing Policy Conference, HUD hosted a session on housing discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation. To ensure that we better understand the breadth and scope of homelessness in the transgender community, we're rethinking how we report gender in our homeless management information systems to ensure that it accurately reflects transgender Americans. And communities are responding. Already we've seen how cities like Denver are acting to ensure their homeless programs are working together to responsibly and appropriately meet the needs of transgender people across all age groups. Perhaps most important of all, we're conducting the first ever national study of LGBT housing discrimination, a historic study we designed based on feedback from town halls with so many of you here tonight that were conducted in communities across the nation. Led by HUD Assistant Secretary Raphael Bostic, this study is partly about getting a clearer picture of the problem. But it's also about making the case that LGBT discrimination, including transgender discrimination, is real. And we can't wait to do something about it. That's why we've been reviewing our existing authority to address housing discrimination related to gender identity. One of the most important things we recognize is that under the Fair Housing Act, prohibition of sex discrimination, we have authority to pursue cases alleging housing discrimination because a person's identity or expression didn't conform with gender stereotypes. And we've also provided staff with guidance instructing them to carefully assess whether any LGBT-based housing discrimination complaints could be pursued through the Fair Housing Act or state or local discrimination laws. And we've launched a webpage on LGBT housing discrimination that helps our local and state partners understand the facts and get this right. We know that these efforts are already having an impact. With these resources helping uncover discrimination that has gone unreported for far too long, last year reports of LGBT housing discrimination increased 15 times compared to the year before. And we've moved forward on more than 3 times as many complaints as we had in the previous 2 years combined. We've also required grant applicants to comply with state and local anti-discrimination laws that protect transgender people, covering 15 states as well as any additional state or local jurisdiction that adds these protections. Over $3 billion in HUD funding is available in these competitions, and we want to make sure as many dollars as possible are protecting the rights of every American. Lastly, just as we're making sure we understand the needs of transgender Americans, we're also making sure that transgender Americans understand their rights as well. With HUD's Live Free Fair Housing Education and Outreach campaign, we've been targeting print and social media like Facebook with videos, podcasts, and ads that address discrimination due to gender stereotypes and let people know how to report it. These are the first steps that we've taken to ensure that all Americans, regardless of age, income, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or gender identity, have access to choice and opportunity. And I tell you this evening, they won't be the last steps that we take. No one should ever have to hide their identity in order to find a home. Not in America.